Started my first startup in '97. The world told me I was insane.
Our goal is creating future economies that are more regenerative and sustainable.
Something didn't match up. Why hasn't this become the next big thing? And that's where we invested.
The whole purpose of achieving anything in life is measurement.
Hey everyone, I'm Manav, Senior Associate here at Shadow Ventures. Really excited to get this panel kicked off. Spatial remote training and task management, led by Jamie from Altoura. I will let Jamie and the panelists introduce themselves, but like I said, really excited about this panel. If you have any questions for the group, please make sure to add them into the chat or the Q&A section on the left side of your screen or on the bottom of your screen. And then at the end, we'll try to carve out just a little bit of time to go through any questions that anyone may have. And with that being said, and to prevent any further delay, Jamie, I will hand it off to you.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Manav. Well, maybe I'll start by letting the group kind of introduce themselves, and I'll just go kind of left to right on my screen. But Andy, do you want to start the intros?
Yeah, sure. So Andy Repton, Head of Product Management for Workplace Technology. And so that really means I look at the future of workplace for our 250,000 plus technologists, 250,000 plus employees, and really looking at the future of emerging technology as well and how that's going to impact the lives of those people. So yeah, very much internal focused in terms of my customer base.
Great. And Andy is joining us. He's with JPMC and based in London. So thank you it's later in the day for you.
The last session of the day, so let's make it a good
last
one.
Session of the day. Awesome. And then Eric, come on.
Yeah, well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Eric Kamont. I work here at Microsoft on our mixed reality team. I specifically manage our partners in the ecosystem, help develop all the strategy and then help bring them to market. I've been working with Jamie here for a number of years. We probably can tell some stories when he had more hair and mine was less gray. But I've been in Microsoft 17 years. I've been on the mixed reality team before we started selling HoloLens 1. And I'm based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So pleasure to be here with the rest of the panelists.
Awesome. And when Eric's not playing with mixed reality, he's jumping fences and crawling through piles of mud on ultra extreme athletic events, right, Eric?
Yes, that is true. That's what all that stuff is back there.
Perfect. And then Salla, go ahead.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you all. I'm Salla Eckhardt. I work for our Center of Innovation as the Director of Transformation Services. So I'm also from Microsoft, but I'm from the internal real estate and security side. My customers are internal, like Andy's. But then I have the pleasure of collaborating with people like Eric that are more external customer facing and that way cross-pollinate what are the best practices in the industry. And I'm driving forward a framework called the Digital Building Lifecycle. And it means that my days are filled with building information model technologies, mixed reality technologies, digital construction and digital twins, all the good stuff. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Jamie for about 5 years now, I think. So I was a mixed reality or extended reality developer for a big construction company based in Seattle, and that's how we met. So it's a pleasure to be here and speaking from an end user point of view.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Saul, and thanks you all for joining me. So just quickly, I'm Jamie Fleming. I'm the founder of Altoura, which is a company that uses spatial computing and mixed reality, extended reality to solve different business processes. And the two areas that we really focus on are in remote training and in collaborative visualization. And I'm just going to back up really quickly and tell you kind of how I arrived at this point, because it's probably will help understand and thread some of the pieces together. My background is in architecture. I have a master's of architecture and worked as an architect and designer for a number of years, and ended up founding a company called Studio 216 that was focused on using 3D models to help visualize projects that didn't exist. So kind of our tagline or our motto was, hey, we can show you the future. We can show you what these big development projects will look like many years before a shovel ever hits the ground. And so initially that was maybe a 2D rendering, a static visualization of a moment in time of a building. And then over the years, as the tech got more sophisticated, we realized that you could do things like run 30 frames a second and create an animation or a video inside of that digital building. And then with the advent of the iPhone and the Oculus and different things, there were suddenly different modalities that we could interact with these 3D models and content. And so that's what really started us down a journey of pivoting our company from a services company to a software company, and developing a platform that allows our customers to take 3D models of equipment or environments, push them into the cloud, and then let users access from a variety of device types and interact with those 3D pixels, the 3D models, but then also interact with one another to do things like spatial training or remote training. And all the people that are on the panel here with me today are both, well, Eric I've known because he has been key in helping our company as a partner of Microsoft. We're a mixed reality, a gold partner of Microsoft, which means we go to market together and to solve these business problems for our customers. And then also as customers, Microsoft happens to be one of our biggest customer with their facilities group using our software for a variety of things. And Andy with JPMorgan, we actually met back on a digital safari where Andy had traveled to Microsoft, to the Redmond campus, to learn about how mixed reality and these technologies are impacting the facilities and real estate and et cetera, all kinds of things that you were learning about. But that's how we sort of struck up a relationship and ended up doing some really interesting work with JPMorgan. What today's topic and what I'd love to kind of spark from the group is, we do a lot of distinct work, for example, in remote training. And I'm gonna just share my screen here, see if this works. Share, I think I have to select that, hit share. And then I'm gonna pull this up. Is everybody seeing my screen? Oop, I don't hear any voices. So
we gave you a thumbs up. No, yeah, it looks good there.
Okay, good, cool.
Great job.
Let me just quickly run through this because I'll try to weave this together really quickly. So I kind of mentioned what we do is take these environments and make them immersive and make them interactive and collaborative. And so we've had, we're fortunate to work with lots of Fortune 500, Fortune 50 customers all over the world. These are the areas that we focus on: collaborative visualization, training, and simulation. And I'm really going to be talking today about the task management, training, and simulation, how those things interface. And we have a really unique opportunity with a Microsoft first-party application that's called Guides. And I'll take just a moment to describe, when we talk about virtual training versus task management, what I'm talking about. So many of you have seen videos or can envision being in a physical location where, let's say you're in a building and you can see a piece of mechanical equipment, but you're not exactly sure how you service that piece of mechanical equipment. Well, Microsoft has an awesome product called Guides that allows you to put on, for example, a HoloLens and get spatial kind of step-by-step instruction of how you interact or interface with that piece of equipment. And what we do at Altoura is we can do an API call into those spatial step-by-step instructions and pull them into what many of you will think of as a digital twin, or I prefer to say a digital cousin of that same environment and equipment, but it's all pixels. And what this allows you to do is now train people on how you interface with that equipment without being physically at the site. And we can invite you in with other people because we use avatars, et cetera, so that you can do that collaboration in real time, or have a mentor kind of walking you through how you learn to do that. And so we can talk about some of the benefits and opportunities there. I'll just give you a really quick example. Let's say you have a generator or something on site, and you are you want to train your staff on how, or your employees on how you could use that. So here's just a really quick video example of showing you, I can bring that digital model into your physical world. You can be anywhere in the world. You could be in there with other people that you're training with or other experts and get spatial instruction where you see maybe photos or videos that are explaining what you do and text associated with that. The system will read you and narrate to you as you're telling you what to do at each step. And then the software detects when you complete that step, it validates that, yes, I've picked up this actuator in this case, and I've moved it to the location that it wants me to move it to, and throws me into the next step. And what's really powerful about this is you can see how this collapses kind of our physical distance by me being able to take an actuator and pass it through space to another person who's maybe 2,000 miles away from me seamlessly, as if we were sitting there together. And so that's kind of represents the power of training, working remotely, but collaboratively. I'm going to pause there really quickly and I'll come back to some slides, but let me see if I can get here. I think I'm going to go back to there and stop sharing. Okay. Cancel. So what I'm really interested in hearing from this group is that we see a lot of opportunity, for example, in manufacturing and even in retail and other sectors where these verticals are taking advantage of remote training. And we know in real estate and facilities, there is a graying workforce, that what we've heard anecdotally from many of our customers is that it's difficult to attract new talent, new blood to come in and learn and understand these complicated systems that are running these buildings. And so we haven't seen as many people in real estate take advantage of the concept of off-site training and on-site task guidance with their facilities. And I wanted to hear from this group about where you see opportunities, or maybe what are blockers from keeping facilities teams or real estate teams from going all in on this technology, and where are some opportunities, but how do you think that we can remove barriers? And so I'll just kind of open that up as an opening question to the group and anybody in the audience. And hopefully I've laid enough groundwork to try to connect the pieces of like what exists in other markets and how maybe we can pick and pull and mash these things together for real estate.
If I can, I'll just build a little bit on what you were saying, and bring kind of, I guess, the reason why I'm quite excited about this kind of technology, particularly for our business, is things like we have hundreds, if not thousands, of branches across the US, and we have buildings all over the world, and our experts are kind of spread across the globe, but they do a lot of traveling because they're servicing all of these offices. We've got a huge real estate portfolio, and so we do a lot of traveling, and a lot of the time we turn up, somebody turns up with their bag of tools, and either the tool that they have in their bag isn't the right tool, or it was something so trivial it doesn't warrant the price of the airfare, and it's something that anybody in the branch could have picked up and turned off. So I think what this technology does is allow that kind of federation of activity in a safe way, and then being able to call on an expert if needed. So I think that's very compelling, as well as reducing fatigue on our staff, increasing flexibility, actually giving rise to a more aging workforce, being able to service some of this stuff with expertise, keeping them kind of more hooked in to the overall sort of life cycle, and then things like carbon footprint, etc. of flight times. So there's a whole load of knock-on benefits from this kind of very, very sort of simple on paper sort of use case. So yeah.
Totally. No, I think those are great points, because in what COVID, I think, highlighted for a lot of people is that even if you wanted to be jumping on that plane to go to the site, it became much more difficult. And suddenly everyone had to kind of rethink, how do we continue to stay productive when we're not as mobile? And if we need to kind of bridge that distance or bridge that gap, what sort of tools are at our disposal? And I think a lot of companies realized they did not have that problem solved when they going into the pandemic. Yeah.
One thing that I'll bring into the mix is the different generations collaborating, co-working in the same legacy portfolios that are now at the technical lifecycle age that repairs and retrofits, sometimes revamps need to exist. But then when you're managing or you're working from someone who might be a baby boomer, maybe not so much anymore, but someone who is a Generation X, and you have someone who is a millennial or Gen Z, in just a few years, Generation Alpha, the millennials and people who are older generations than that, we're dealing with, or we were taught to deal with technologies that was developed by the last generations.
Yeah.
And now we have the digitally native generations asking us, please help me, guide me. They are very engaging with their seniors or people who have long careers before them. So they're constantly asking, like, how might I solve this? And you're supposed to be there supporting them. But these technologies, I knew about their existence maybe 10 years ago, but they didn't really hit the market until maybe 5-6 years ago. So now it's the generation that are asked for help, they are learning these technologies, and they need to have the confident guidance to give to those that are the new generation of facility managers and real estate professionals. So I think that's where the current gap is, but it can be easily bridged with proper education so that people are aware of these tools and their capabilities, and then adding the proper training so that people are trained digitally and not with the last generation technology.
I think, Salla, that's spot on. And we hear that over and over again from our customers who are facing this real problem of, like, we have a generation who is retiring with all that knowledge in their head. How do we kind of capture and preserve this, this knowledge so that it can be both passed on, but also maybe even looking at how can you use a workforce that requires less experience to complete the same tasks, because they really are able to kind of train and understand how to do it. But then when they're on site, they can get remote expert assistance from others to help them through. And so you suddenly need either a smaller workforce or certainly a less skilled, less experienced workforce to still be able to do very sophisticated or things that would have taken somebody 10, 15 years to kind of master and understand what you're supposed to do at any given moment. What I wanted to show you on screen there was just an example where you could get a little bit better idea of what I'm talking about in terms of interacting with a sophisticated piece of equipment and seeing the step-by-step instruction and being in there with coworkers or mentors or instructors as you're kind of practicing how you do something, how you operate a piece of equipment. Eric, any words of expertise from your end? What are you seeing out there you work with lots of different partners, not just Altoura. So you kind of get a perspective across different verticals and different industries. And, I think everyone agrees that some of the biggest opportunities are in manufacturing to use this technology where you can get on-site task assistance. But what do you hear in the industry, as well as many of the people I think in this summit are focused on kind of real estate or facilities? Mm-hmm. Love to hear your thoughts there.
I mean, I think you're highlighting a problem that I don't think is necessarily focused on facilities or real estate. You're talking about a challenge around skilling, right? Like, this is what it turns into, right? So you've got a series of employees, whether they're direct employees, contractors, it doesn't matter, right? Like no matter what industry you're in, healthcare, you could be a teacher, like you could be a consumer, you could be in like the manufacturing industry, farm, it doesn't matter. Like the point is at some point, and I think Salla made the comment, you've got an aging workforce that has all this tribal knowledge, which has historically always been a challenge. How do you take the knowledge out of one person's head and put it someplace else? For years, that was in big documents and books, and it didn't age well, and it became static, right? And then you have this idea that, like, back to Andy's point, people are having a hard time of traveling. Even when travel comes back, there's no guarantee people want to travel, which is like what we're running into right now. People are like, I'm good. I like working from home, or I like working. People became hermits. And so now they're like, how do we dehermitize people for the next, few years? And in fact, what you see them is embracing technology. They're embracing video, they're embracing camera. Well, I mean, you basically have two essential problems, right? Which is, how do I skill somebody newly, right? Hey, you're coming into this company, you've never done this before, you're coming out of college or vocation or whatever. I need to teach you and just shove all this knowledge into your brain. Or you have people that are like upskilling or reskilling themselves. I want to be cross-trained. I want to be retrained. Hey, I've got a new product that's being introduced with a new instruction set. Yes, I make widgets, but now I got to make widget model XYZ that has all these different components to it. And what was traditional was sending people off, they'll go become an expert somewhere. Doesn't matter what they were doing, apprenticeships, or they went to training facilities or whatever. And now you're going, wait, I can literally just hand you a device with the proper amount of training, right? And that will guide you. So there's like a risk mitigation process, assuming the instructions are correct. They're realistic. So it doesn't look like it's like, I'm trying to translate really poorly documented instructions to this real world thing. But the thing that you guys have done, which I think is some of the secret sauce, is it's collaborative. So the idea that you now have this like voice, isn't just a voice, it's like a person who's interacting with you from a cube over to thousands of miles away. You're solving for putting people in the exact same environment, and you're solving for essentially giving them knowledge that it's easier to obtain, right? We know this. We know that some people read documentation and they assess that really well. There's other people that are like, that's why they call it hands-on training. That's why they, do one, learn one, do one, teach one. I mean, that's why all these little monikers exist, is because you want that hands-on skill. And so you do that. And I think you see this in like the aviation industry, where they train pilots for hundreds of hours before they ever touch an actual airline. You see simulated work experiences, for UL, OSHA, all these other things, just again, over and over and over again. So it's an obvious connection, and it's so obvious that people are going, that don't even work in this industry, are going, so how do I put the YouTube video next to my car so I can change my brakes, right? It's that obvious. And you go, well, instead of changing your brakes, how about we maintain a $15,000 piece of machinery that our entire company depends on, right? Or, hey, this piece of machinery is out in the field and the customer can do the work. Why would I send a tech if I can just remotely be remoted in and the customer can follow the instructions? It's game-changing technology. And it's not like it's science fiction. I think it's what a lot of people go, oh, that's cool. I saw that on a movie one time. Isn't that like Iron Man, right? Isn't that how that works? And you go, no, this is stuff you can have today. In fact, you could have had it 6 years ago. It's just more mainstream today.
Right.
So that, like, I think the thing I would come away with is this is like a fundamental human challenge, regardless of industry. And this stuff's real. I mean, it's totally capable. It's not price prohibitive like military investments. You're not going to space or something like that. Like, you can do this today. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. I was going to show just another thing here. I'm popping back and forth, and you guys feel free to talk over the top of me. But, one question that often comes up for people is like, well, how do you, where do you start? How do you get this information into the system? And I'll show you this is the other side of work that we often do, which is on collaborative visualization. And I think, Salla, at this point is kind of near and dear to your heart, is like the entire building life cycle, from kind of design all the way through construction to occupying the building and then kind of running the building. And so what we have built is the interface that allows you to take like a BIM model or a BIM 360 model and push it into the cloud, and then stream that down to devices and make it interactive so that I can instantly see, as you're changing the layout of something, we can see this in real time. And this happens to be a Microsoft project in Sydney, Australia, where we've got participants from Singapore and Australia, and I'm joining them from the Seattle area. You can reach out, and touch a digital wall, and you can leave a note about that's spatial and persistent, meaning that it's going to always be on that virtual wall. And you can come back days or weeks later, and that information is still preserved there. Kind of like if you set up a war room and we're using it to lay out pin drawings or leave sticky notes, etc. What's really interesting to me is how you can use the same digital content that was helpful back in the design phase that then becomes a useful tool as you're in a construction phase, because it's essentially a 3D blueprint of what this project is supposed to be like. And then it's also a helpful stakeholder communication tool as you're explaining to people what this design is going to be, and even the employees, letting them know with, doing various change management things of bringing them into a new facility. What I think is a piece, and again, kind of the topic of this call, is how then you can parlay the same content into training a workforce on how to maintain the building. And we're just starting to do some innovative work with companies, Fortune 500 companies that are looking at this exact topic of bringing that same information in. But Salla, I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of that whole building life cycle and how we can really extract the most value out of these processes.
Thank you, Jamie. So when thinking about the platform that we were just looking at and thinking about the experience that we can create digitally for people, speaking from like personal experience, using mixed reality in pre-construction before setting foot on site ever, and doing it many, many times, not necessarily the 100 hours that pilots need, like Eric mentioned, but really have the opportunity to experience the project before going on site, building the muscle memory, building kind of a memory overall about what did you see, what did you experience, what did you wonder about, where did you have additional questions for others to support you, and then going to the physical environment. And it is quite interesting feeling when your brain calibrates that you see where the items that you've experienced digitally are in slightly different location, or the choice of materials or the choice of products has been changed. It's instant that you see that this is a little bit off based on what my experience was in the digital room or digital space. This is slightly different from what we discussed. And that way, when you are verifying things, when you're communicating with others, it's way more inclusive. You can always go back to verifying that what was it that we agreed upon, and what was the reason that something changed. And most importantly, when thinking about the physical environments and going into places that might be under development, there is always the element of safety first. And how do you train people to operate and move and communicate and just be in that physical location as safely as they can, and avoid any incidents or accidents from happening. So these environments are game changing in terms of how we can mitigate risks that Eric was talking about, and really train people and build their own muscle memory about how they are planning to operate and work in the same space with others, and prepare for doing what they're there to do, and keep that transparent communication. And when looking at the features in the platform, some people still prefer to have the 2D drawings. Some people might want to have a written description about what the expectations are. Some people love to operate with the 3D components and kind of play a little bit. This platform can support all kinds of different learning experiences and combine them together. So it's a surprise for people who think that their learning capability is a certain way and they prefer something, but then when exposed to something like this, they might have a change in mind.
Right. And so I think it begs the question, like, why maybe it's cool, and yes, maybe it could kind of help a little bit by doing this, but really, what's the kind of economics around this? Like, where is the ROI? What's the impetus to even get started on this? And I'll just share a few. We dig really deeply in with our customers to track business metrics. Like, what is the return for what you're putting into this thing? And the key things that we see around the remote training and the task guidance is, reduction in or acceleration of upskilling. So, for example, if you had a process that used to take 4 days on site to kind of go through this training, we're collecting information from customers that they're able to reduce that to a single day on site, and they offload everything else into a virtual training that you're just set up and mastering at your own time, kind of at your own convenience, at your own location. And interestingly, with some of our customers that are in a zero defect industry, because they're in pharma or other industries, they see that same reduction in training time with zero additional errors being made for example, on the production line. And so I think it really does demonstrate a powerful return on investment just in the time saved in skilling, not to mention what Andy was talking about earlier about reducing travel, reducing kind of the hoteling and the flights and all of the time that maybe you arrived at site and you weren't really prepared for what you were going to face, instead of jumping in and looking at the digital cousin and seeing what was going on, because you have a scaled representation of that whole environment and you can kind of see the systems. So Andy, I'm curious, do you hear anything else in the industry? And you touch lots of different pieces of JPMorgan, but is ROI, what are your thoughts and ideas around?
Yeah, and I think about it. So as you spelled out, like across the whole life cycle. So when we look at design of new facilities, new buildings, interiors, the cost of change is usually pretty high with buildings projects, and the further on you go down down the project, the higher the cost of change is. So the more you can kind of get in the bowels of the building and assess what it looks like while it's still digital representation and not physical, the cost of change is just greatly reduced. That's got to be huge ROI for the buildings industry. Right. And so that's design and build. And then when you get into maintaining, I think you kind of pretty much covered most of them, but the cost of resolution, that just it's got to just plummet. I haven't got any hard numbers around it, but the instinct just tells me it's got to plummet. And then when we start talking about, and maybe this is veering off a little bit, but when we start thinking about the employee experience, there's a lot of exciting opportunities here for attracting talent and connecting them with your spaces in a really kind of, at the moment, very cool way. And then new hire orientation. We hire a lot of people, and we spend a lot of time and energy on getting orientation, day one experience right. So if, the more we can do of orientating people to the building before they even arrive, helps them with their kind of day one anxiety, but also helps us from just making sure people know where things are, how to get into the building, safety, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, huge amounts of ROI there, I see.
Yeah, totally.
I've got some thoughts too, Jamie, just to add on to both Salla and to Andy's points. I think, what was it? There's two of them I want to share. One of which is like this idea of inclusiveness and accessibility. There was not you guys, but there was another partner that did a bunch of work with like adults without autism and using HoloLens to help like navigate instructions to train them for basically getting careers. And so, as you know, anybody like most people with autism are like have sensory issues, right? And so the idea that the way that they learn or perceive the universe is a little different than the average individual. But going, oh wow, I can still train, I can get in touch with people with different types of ways that they interact with the world. We've seen success with something like this technology. So this isn't just about taking normal, ordinary human beings, but like going, hey, what about the rest of the inclusive environment that I can maintain? Which again, for a lot of companies is a big deal. Like, how do you embrace the workforce? How do you embrace local resources? How do you bring them into the fold? The other one that we've seen, and this is, I don't know how it is, Andy, in Europe, but I mean, I know here in the US, like the trades are just like, there's not enough people to do all the trade work, HVAC and electric and everything else that goes into construction. And again, while we're talking about real estate, I mean, that idea from literally design all the way to the maintenance side is massive. And you've got all these contractors and trades that are involved, and there's not enough people to do the work. And so when you go, hey, it's going to take me 6 months to go install blah inside of your environment, but I got these 3 new guys that just started and they're going through apprenticeship, it's going to take them a year. Well, if I can condense that down to a few months, okay, now the trades, you start filling in these gaps again where the market, and again, this is regardless of the pandemic. I mean, I think this is what you're seeing, this slow creep up of supply chain downstream impact. And so you take something like this, and you go, great, I can solve a piece of machinery for a really highly educated individual. What about all these other people that aren't trained, right? That need to come in, that want jobs, but you go, man, I don't have a great onboarding process, and I'm too busy to train them. Like this is, and a lot of those contractors are small. I mean, I got 50 people that work for my company, and they're trying to maintain this massive organization. So it's not just about all these, big giant corporations that are trying to do this work. It's, all these local mom and pop places that are trying to participate in that economy.
Yeah. To your point about diversity, that opens up new channels for re-engaging, retirees who have got all that knowledge, and they don't want to get on their hands and knees anymore with a span,
Right.
But they can impart that knowledge if they could do that from home in the hours that they're comfortable working. I mean, it's a great win. So I think there's some really exciting possibilities there.
I remember the old joke, right? When the Y2K was around, they had to call all these people that retired who knew COBOL, right, to go back and teach all the noobs how to I mean, it's the same thing, right? There's like this knowledge they left with. But to your point, somebody that's got arthritis in his knees and he's 75 years old, he's like, that person has still got valuable information. How do you get that out of their brain? Or and then you see this in what's funny about it, you see this in medicine a lot, right? You see this where you've got an aging doctor who's been practicing, but now goes into a teaching capacity, right? And he's in advising. The same thing could be very true in manufacturing. It's like, unless you can pick up the 50 pounds, you can't work for us. It's like these very strength related requirements sometimes, right? So I agree with you. I think having that aging workforce still being included and well compensated, and get to work on some, like my father-in-law is like, I don't know, he's mid-70s, and this guy's still doing CAD design for construction stuff, and he keeps learning and learning and learning. At some point he's like, I'm going to give up. And I'm like, wait, I put the HoloLens on his face. He's like, okay, I'm still in. It's just,
you haven't sold him Altoura yet, Eric?
The fact that I can get him to do his passwords for email right now is actually a great one step at a time, man. Baby steps.
Yeah, something that we haven't touched on as well, but I think there is a huge opportunity in safety training, both on the construction site, but even as you're kind of maintaining these buildings, there are that's a real issue of being able to let people train for unsafe situations safely. And we did some work with Qantas just prior to the pandemic. And I love one of the learning designers we were working with said, the power of Altoura is it lets us train our pilots and engineers for unsafe situations in a safe way. And I think that same opportunity exists definitely in construction and in these facilities management of, it's very easy to recreate experiences and let people train by experience. Can you see what's dangerous in this setting, and can you correct it by, if you're in a HoloLens and you have your hands free, you can actually physically interact with that environment and correct something that's dangerous, or know when you need to vacate, or any of those situations. Planning for natural disasters, for earthquake or fire, or whatever the situation is.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, and I don't know how easy the polls are to create, but it'd be good to get a poll from the people watching about how many of them have actually experienced immersive technologies, particularly virtual reality, and just really, because I think once you've experienced it, you just get how powerful that experience is to knowledge retention, to learning, to to really kind of feel the effects of, like you said, sort of safety training. You do the wrong thing, you get burnt. What does that look like in virtual reality? It's pretty good, right? It's it's serious. So
well, and to Andy's point, I think the seriousness, and even to your point, Jamie, like we've seen this too as a trend, is like, not that you need to do this for everything, but like the gamification model. I mean, to your point, and Salla mentioned before, you have this like new incoming workforce of, students, right, and younger generation that are used to embracing the way that they learn in a certain style. This is almost like, I mean, not to take, like a bad example, but I mean, it's like playing Xbox to go learn how to do stuff, right? I mean, we think about the sensory impact and where the world is, and oh my God, the digitization. But you're right, they're in the safety net. I mean, they can't harm themselves, and we've seen this with like, there's a lot of interest in like a nuclear regulatory. We've seen this in the military, right? I mean, again, obviously the aviation examples are prominent, but most people don't think about like, let me make sure you understand how this big press does, because if you put your finger in there, it's not going to come out the way it was before it went in. So like there's a lot of safety issues in manufacturing and of course in construction. So yeah, that's massive. And then, and the fact that, it doesn't have to be in this confined, cute little space. You can use it in these like, I don't want to say fully outdoor settings, but these like open air environments, right? Where you can, hey, it doesn't matter the temperature and I'm using it as dirty. I'm in the back of like, it's like, like an auto shop, right? I mean, like whatever, you put one of these on, you can do stuff. And because you're touching the world, you don't need to worry about your hands making things dirty and that kind of stuff. Accessibility is there.
Yeah, and overall, picking on the term worry, that the young generation, they are so skilled, they are so capable of things, but yet they don't have the confidence necessary that someone who's been in the industry for decades has. And sometimes those that have been around a few times, we are overconfident in our own knowledge, and then we just shut down the alternative point of views that the younger generations have. So when thinking about those questions, that what if these types of platforms, they keep everyone safe in testing out that, what if we did things differently, and what if you did something that might be dangerous, but then again might not. So having that opportunity to kind of test things out and not have anyone injured, not even have feelings hurt because someone had a different idea. That's inclusivity that this technology is really supporting.
That's awesome.
It's a really good point, Salla.
Well, I think, I'm not sure if people are, I think we were encouraged to leave some time for people to ask questions. If there are questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And any other thoughts that you guys have, if you have other thoughts, but I guess questions would come up into this chat panel.
Is it chat, or they come off mute and talk?
Or maybe
questions actually just
they can add it into the Q&A. I can read them off for you guys.
Okay.
If you can't see them. So the very first one that just came in was compelling great panel examples. Collab around repair seem to be dependent on available deep data sets. What use cases could be targeted as key data sets that are still being generated?
Deep data sets.
So it's, let me see if I'm kind of grokking what that question is around. So you can take like information from BIM models of systems or that you have built in the BIM model, and then you can reveal those inside that digital twin or digital cousin, so that you can pull that information. And anonymous, if you maybe you can help clarify if I'm going down the right path or not. But if you, for example, were needing to do, you're trying to maintain this building, or you're trying to change something, the ability to put on a HoloLens or even use an iPad and align that digital twin with the physical building, and then see where structural is or where mechanical systems are or whatever, so that you understand maybe where you can penetrate a wall in order to access something or to add something. I think those are maybe an example of kind of the data that you can pull into that model that is useful in the physical world. Maybe you guys understood the question slightly.
I guess just building on that. So there's kind of static data, which is models, and then how those models kind of interact to create some kind of, activity. Then I guess as this technology matures and is right, there's I guess use cases we can do now, and then there are use cases we want to do in the future when there's more data available. So I really like the use case of sensors technology and being able to walk through a building and see how the building's breathing and doing. Be able to see all the sensors are green over there because you can see in your augmented view that the sensors are green, and then that one over there is the one that needs attention, even though it's behind a roof panel. But that requires data and a lot of data integration, etc. So it'd be good to maybe get Salla, Eric's view on that and where you guys see the maturity of that,
right?
If at all.
Yeah. So I'll take a stab at this. It could be very trivial. What is the targeted key data set that needs to be existing and available for the end user? Just from the top of my mind, materials data, knowing, is it steel, is it wood, is it concrete, is it asbestos, is it micro nano silica, something that requires you to go and get geared up with safety gear and keep yourself safe so that you don't end up creating issues and later on problems down the line. So it could be very trivial data that needs to be the deep data set available for the end users. But it's again about how do we keep people safe when they go and do something in the physical environment, so they know what tools they can use and what is the right personal protective gear that they need to have on, and if there is a need for additional pair of hands to help out.
I always need an extra pair of pants for sure. I think your answers are amazing. My only thing, I would take a step back, and sometimes what I think happens is when we think about more data, it becomes more complicated, therefore more off-putting to a lot of organizations. So while we can pull in things like IoT data and you can pull in BIM models, they're not prerequisites. I think that's always the thing about how do you make this real today versus make it real in 2 years or 12 months from now. And so, as an example, we can reverse engineer just a creation of very simplistic models, instructions. You can do this recording kind of concept. I want to record the steps and let the physical object, you can just draw lines to where the object is. You don't even have to mimic the physical object if you just want to read out text and pictures to give instructions. And then you can be so bold at some point when your IoT organization or IoT technology has been matured in your organization, where you can consume and suck in HVAC data and location data and maybe foot traffic. And then you got this topography view of where people are, and you got, dwell time. The challenge is when you put all that together, that's super complicated for an organization. IT departments I have no cycles for this. We're still trying to upgrade to the cloud, or we're trying to get off of Windows XP still, or whatever random things that they run into. So I think, Jamie, back to your solution specifically, it's this, you have a good, better, best, and you can do good today, you can do better tomorrow, and you can do best in 2 years. I think that's probably how I would frame it out.
Yeah, and Mark, it looks like maybe you clarified some of what you're trying to scratch down at, and I totally hear. I understand your point that you do have a lot of fractured data or incomplete data, and I think part of the compelling opportunity with spatial computing is that you need a vehicle to kind of house that data in a spatial manner. I mean, we fundamentally in real estate and facilities are talking about things that have a spatial component to it. And so what we've tried to build is a platform that's very flexible, that allows you to easily tag or embed or reveal that data in a spatial manner. And so maybe it is fractured, but what you do know, you can start to build more and more of the puzzle together by layering that information into that digital twin or digital cousin. And the fact that you can use it across the lifespan, all the way from, at any really point in a building's lifespan, but that you can use that same information over and over again, if that's for training or if that's for collaborative visualization or just to leave kind of spatial instructions for the next person coming down the line. I think it's a compelling way to interact with the world.
All right. Any other questions from the audience?
Well, this is fantastic. I think, there's a lot of really interesting work that we're doing right now as kind of proof of concept and kind of piloting some of these concepts that we can't talk too deeply about now, but I think maybe at Shadow Summit a year from now, we'll be able to share more of that work that's kind of happening right now. That's pretty fascinating, pretty interesting.
Well, no, absolutely. This was really interesting. I think that this was it was great to sort of see. Right, we've talked a lot about emerging technologies, and I think this very much lines up with one of those things that is greatly emerging and will quickly be adopted. I think in our built worlds and real estate space. Right. So, no, thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Andy, Salla, Eric. Thank you all for making the time today to participate as part of Summit. We really appreciate it. Like I said, this was a great panel. For me, it was sort of, Eric, I think you mentioned it, right? It is sort of like that sci-fi, but this is reality, right? And it's really cool to see that. So I think this was, and we're really personally, Shadow obviously is really excited to see, the plans for where Altoura goes in the future and sort of where things move. So with that being said, it doesn't look like there's any other questions. So once again, thank you, everyone. We do have a keynote next. So the overview of the U.S. infrastructure bill by Squire Patton Boggs. Mole Nayak will run it. So that's obviously hopefully very valuable for most of the attendees here at Summit today. But we do have a little bit more time. So I'll hand it back to you, Jamie, if you want to do any shameless plug for Altoura or anything like that. Now's the time. But once again, thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for having us. And Salla, Andy, Eric, thanks for joining us. Great to hear your voices. And I'm glad I get to interface with you guys all the time, but I'd love to open up and let others hear your smart and intelligent things that you guys have to say. It certainly is inspiring to me, and you guys are all great to work with. So thank you much. And
you're welcome.
Listening, we'd love to see if you have a what if use case. We're happy to talk to you about it and see if our platform, if we solve for your particular use case of what you're looking to do.
Absolutely. So if anyone needs a connection to Jamie, please let me know and we'll be glad to make it. So
perfect.
All right.
Thanks, Manev.
Awesome panel. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day. Take care. Bye.